What is assisted suicide? Is it really necessary? These are issues you need to think about now because it's not uncommon for people to feel forced into important, life-altering decisions. We'll explore that and more on today's edition of Life Matters. Our host, Brian Johnston, has been a teacher at every academic level, from adult education and junior college down through high school, junior high, and even 5th and 6th grade. Many on the California pro-life team call him the Life Coach. Today, you'll find out why on Life Matters.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're your program on the right to life and on the battle of ideas that's now swirling regarding that concept, that idea that every human life has value, that every human life is significant and should be protected by the law. That's an important concept, but it's been lost now in our culture, and it's been distorted. I came across an article this week, a very interesting article, and it's in the Wall Street Journal. Let me just read a little bit to you. It's called, "In Japan, under 75 is the new pre-old. Parts of the world's oldest nation bump up its classification for the elderly." This appeared in the Wall Street Journal, September 24th of 2021. And you should know this about Japan. Japan has the world's oldest population. It's very interesting. It's by far the oldest nation, with more than 29% of the population 65 or older. That's almost 30% of the population is 65 or older, compared with only 17% in the U.S. and 21% in Europe. Efforts to get younger have gone nowhere. The birth rate is still falling, and immigration has nearly ground to a halt because of COVID-19. But a very interesting phenomenon happens in Japan, because Japan has decided to change its view of what it means to be old. And linguistically, they're officially changing the language used. The millions of people have learned that now, officially, they're not old, but merely pre-old. That's right. In Japan, at the age of 65, people were considered elderly. But now, a new phrase is come into use, and these individuals are going to be called pre-old. From 65 to 75, you're not considered old. So as long as she stays in Nagano, Sachiko Kobayashi, when she's 65, she won't be called elderly. She instead is going to be called pre-old, because the city wants people to see themselves as active and valid after 65. And to keep their older residents active, by redefining the word, it only considers people 75 and older to be elderly. This is an important statement by the government to affirm that it's good to be old, that it's not a bad thing. We are living in a culture, and I'm sure you can see it, where only that which is young is affirmed. And so much of our culture is geared, and there's reasons for that. We'll talk about that in a minute. We have spoken of it in the past, where the elderly are not embraced, but actually moved aside in our culture. They're invited to move aside. As you know, I've been to many nursing homes in California. Some of these nursing homes are great, but not many of them. Many of them actually end up being warehouses for the elderly. And it's part of our cultural problem, where we see the elderly as gone through their prime, used up, set aside, and our culture tends to dismiss getting old. If I could, I'd like to name this particular episode, "It's Good to Get Old." And I want to challenge your understanding, because you're being taught by this culture to disregard the elderly and to hate getting old yourself, when in fact, that isn't how you should view things. That's a dystopian worldview. I am personally a Christian, and so I often color my comments with a biblical worldview. I'm comfortable doing that. I hope you don't mind, because most of the people I know that are involved in the pro-life movement in any way are Christians, and they shouldn't be ashamed of that. Our founders were not ashamed of Christianity. In fact, to be quite precise, they laid a foundation on the fact that we have a creator, that that's where our lives came from, and that our government is best when it recognizes that those lives are a gift from God. That's what our debate is about. So we need to recognize that there are principles that God has demonstrated in nature. And again, our founder said that. Our founders said that we hold these truths to be self-evident. They said they also wanted to build on the laws of nature and of nature's God. So don't be offended if I give some biblical references here, but I personally believe that if you want to escape the mindset of a dystopia, you have to understand what worldview to adopt. And if there is a God, I strongly recommend attempting to find out what God's worldview is and see how you can apply it. When it comes to getting old, the scriptures are replete with examples and instructions that the gray-haired is considered a crown of glory when found in the way of righteousness, that it's a gift, that if you honor your father and mother, it says that you're going to live a long life. There are certain principles of living a long life that are actually very, very good. Our culture has taken an inverted view of that. They're looking at the opposite end of the telescope. And again, this is what we call a dystopia. And this disregard for the elderly comes at a great cost because now, because medicine is used to kill the very young when they're vulnerable, medicine is now being used to kill the elderly. And we're going to talk about that and what you can do about it and how you can be an advocate for the elderly in America because they are candidates for medical killing. That's happening now. And the right to life is actually about the issue of protecting those that can't protect themselves. Those of you who are familiar with my recent book, The Evil Twins, Roe and Doe, How the Supreme Court Unleashed Medical Killing, you understand what I'm talking about. That the real decision of the Supreme Court was not actually about what women can do. The real decision of the Supreme Court in Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton is actually about what doctors are to do. Doctors who are supposed to be healers. Doctors who had sworn for 2,500 years up to that point that they would never harm another human being, especially when they're most vulnerable. It was the Supreme Court that changed that in Roe and Doe, but not by giving women the right to do something. They gave doctors the right to kill vulnerable human babies whenever that doctor felt like it. If you don't believe me, listen to what Ruth Bader Ginsburg says.
Another feature of Roe is Roe really isn't about the woman's choice, is it? It's about the doctor's freedom to practice his profession as he thinks best. It wasn't woman-centered. It was physician-centered.
So that's Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She understood that Roe v. Wade doesn't actually protect women in any way or have an interest in what women do. It's entirely about who can kill babies. And since they wanted to allow the killing of babies, they made sure it was doctors that did it and that they couldn't be prosecuted. So doctors' freedom to kill human beings began on January 22nd, 73. But those were the vulnerable human beings. And that freedom to kill when a doctor feels it's appropriate, that has now crept into our culture. When we come back, we're going to talk more about why it's okay to be old, why the cultural view of getting older has been distorted, why you should reassert the value of being old. And in a sense, yes, the biblical values. And I say biblical because God has demonstrated in nature these principles. There are other cultures that honor the elderly too, that don't follow the Bible, but they follow the self-evident truth that getting old is a good thing. Our culture has embraced the opposite. And right now, as we speak, the elderly are being killed because they're considered disposable.
Life Matters continues after this.
Life Matters is designed to equip you, the pro-life individual, for this very real battle for life. And it's getting intense now. Please join our Text to Give drive to support Life Matters in this battle right now. Text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, just the word. Text the word GIVE to this number, 916-347-5644. This isn't a phone-in line, it's a text line. Text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 916-347-5644 to help us at this pledge time. The battle is very real. Innocent babies Innocent lives are being taken, and the lives of others are now at risk. Text the word GIVE to 916-347-5644. Thanks.
Are you willing to step up to be a lifeguard? We're asking you to consider becoming a Life Matters lifeguard. On Life Matters, we cut to the depths of this cultural battle of ideas that has robbed America of its core values and robbed the innocent of their right to life. Anything you can pledge is appreciated. But if you pledge $19 a month, we will make you part of the Life Matters lifeguard team, getting you the important tools and dynamic information to help save lives and encourage others in understanding the lurking dangers in today's deadly cross currents of culture. Your pledge helps us with our costs of broadcast. It keeps the full understanding of the right to life going out over our numerous radio stations, and also facilitates the important podcast that carries even more programming. Please go to the front page of the Life Matters website and click on the donate button. Your donation is deeply appreciated.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Okay, so we know this. We know that we live in a culture where now the medical profession, the healing arts, has been told it can kill human beings when they're vulnerable. You heard from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the preeminent feminist who admits the real issue is that doctors are the ones who are licensed to kill. This licensing has had grave implications, and in particular, the fact that people don't understand this is going on. That's alarming. But there's much more. Our culture is aiming itself now at dismissing the elderly and equipping doctors and authorizing doctors to use the killing arts. Instead of the healing arts, the killing arts for those who are older. There was a publication called The Atlantic Magazine. And several years ago, Ezekiel Emanuel, who is the brother of Rahm Emanuel, he was one of the co-authors of Obamacare, contributed to it heavily, and he wrote a very significant article. And I was thinking of that when I read this article from the Wall Street Journal about Japan. He wrote an article that said, "Why I Hope to Die at 75." An argument that society and families and you will be better off if nature takes its course swiftly and promptly. So as he goes through this article, Ezekiel Emanuel, one of the contributors to Obamacare, has determined that you really don't want to have a healthy life that gradually has you losing your senses. How much better to die willingly and healthy? It'll be glorious. Oh, it'll be great. Let's set things up so that at 75, people can go out in style. If you ever saw the movie Soylent Green, that's literally what happens. And a very interesting movie, but in Soylent Green, that's one of the motifs, is that people then are euthanized. They go to euthanasia centers. They hear their favorite music. They see pictures from their past. They have a great time as they're euthanized. And this is considered an idyllic society. But my friend, it's not. This is actually the opposite of idyllic. This is dismissing human beings. And very often, and even though we hear about this, the fact is that very often these same individuals can go on and do amazing things. I want to assert to you one of the problems is that culturally, we are taught to equate age with health. And these are actually two different things. I'd like to present myself as an example. I believe, even though I'm older than I once was, in some ways I'm healthier. Part of it is that the things that I put in my body were actually unhealthy. The habits that I had. We do know this, that diet and exercise are dramatically important to your health. We also know that because of our lifestyle and culture, supplements, dietary supplements can be extraordinary. And I could give you plenty of examples, but I supplement all the time. There's some excellent supplements that can protect your health. Speaking of health that might be in danger, we know that from viruses like COVID, there are actually things you can do to boost your protection. You don't have to surrender to the idea that there's a virus that'll kill you. There are actually antiviral approaches and treatments that will protect your immune system, boost your immune system. Well, that's done because of what you take in. Your diet and your supplements can actually prevent you from catching many viruses. That's the reason you take vitamin C, to prevent the cold virus, to stop it if it does enter your body. The flu virus, there are antivirals that are available to you, but that's just one example, and perhaps the most obvious in this time of COVID. The way you treat your body and the way you view your body is very important, and that's why what the Japanese are doing by reminding people how they view their own body, how they view their own age is critically important, because so much of what we do comes as we get older, we get wiser. With the aged, you will often find wisdom. It's not a perfect guarantee, but the fact is their experience often guides them, and that should not be lost. That again brings me back to what we're often told in scriptures. In Leviticus, we're instructed, "You shall rise up before the gray-headed and honor the aged, and you shall revere your God. I am the Lord." So that's an instruction from God, that you honor the elderly. Later on in Job, it says that the wisdom is with aged men, and long life is understanding. In Psalm 92:14, it says of the righteous, "They will still yield fruit in old age. They shall be full of sap and very green." It says in Genesis of the death of Abram. Abram breathed his last and died in ripe old age, an old man and satisfied with life, and he was gathered to his people. So the virtues of old age are a gift, just as life itself is a gift. Our culture has dismissed that, and part of it has become the acceptance of progressivism in our culture. That's right. Progressivism is built on the idea of progressing to a new place, moving forward. If you go back to our episode on understanding Hegel and the progressive ideology, Hegel asserts that times are changing and you have to leave behind old things to embrace the new. The zeitgeist is embracing new things, and the government helping to lead that. That's what progressivism is built on Hegel's view of the dialectic, that cultures are changing. And in order to change, you must leave behind the old. So there's an inherent bias towards that which is new and towards dismissing that which is old. This is a very dangerous worldview, because there's no rootedness, there's no moorings, there's no actual understanding of what works. It's merely the assertion that we need new things. We need to leave the past behind. And that somehow that's a virtue in and of itself. By leaving behind the past, we're accomplishing something. That is without intellectual merit. And those ideas that are presented are never tested. Unlike, by the way, in the physical world, you might say that Edison and scientists, they're always trying new things, but Edison is the best example. A true scientist dealing in the physical world is willing to say when their new idea is wrong, and they'll toss it aside. That's how physical progress in terms of technology moves forward, because people are willing to test the idea before they mandate it. That's happening all the time in real science. But in the Hegelian progressivism, it sounds scientific. We have to have a new form of government. We have to do new things. But those ideas aren't tested, and they aren't abandoned. They're simply embraced, and the old things are pushed aside. So Hegel and progressivism will pretend that it's following science. But true science does not dismiss that which is old, because often that which is old is proven. What true science does is they find new proofs, and they test, and they're willing to dismiss that which is flawed and wrong. And that should be the same in your life and how you view your own life as you get older, how you view the life of the elderly, because every individual is unique. And every older individual in every nursing home in this nation has had a unique experience. I know, I've sat at bedsides and heard incredible stories that are just stunning. And it's amazing how we're discarding these valuable lives and their experiences because we're not embracing what it means to honor the old. And we're now embracing the dismissal of certain human lives. Because of Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton, medicine is dismissing whole classifications of human lives. Babies they don't want, this baby isn't valuable. As a doctor, I can do the abortion. If this elderly person I think is not valuable, better that they die. Ezekiel Emanuel is actually reflecting this worldview that if you have physical imperfections, that aging, you would be better off dying in your prime so you don't have to go through all of that. That's a genuine philosophy that is operating now in the medical profession and in the culture at large. We're not embracing the elderly. We're not honoring the elderly. And in our own lives, we're viewing ourselves getting old as a bad thing, when in fact, it's a good thing. It's good to be old.
Life Matters continues after this.
We understand that there are still some folks who prefer to give the old-fashioned way, through sending in a check, and we certainly appreciate that. If you'd like to send a check to Life Matters, please send it to our P.O. Box. That's Life Matters, P.O. Box 935, Sacramento, California, 95812. Thank you in advance for your kindness and generosity. That's how we get our work done.
The battle for life is getting very real. Please support our Text to Give drive. Text the word GIVE to 916-347-5644. The word GIVE to 916-347-5644. Help Life Matters in the battle for life. That's text the word GIVE to 916-347-5644.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
We're back, and you're listening to Life Matters. We're talking about it's good to be old. That's why I'm calling this episode, It's Good to Be Old, and I want to encourage you. A couple things you can do. Make sure that in your own life, you're looking after your own health. And as you get older, you actually can improve your health. Exercise, the proper types of exercise, very, very important. Don't become a kook. You can actually pull muscles. If you don't learn how to use your body properly, it's harder to exercise. But you can learn how to exercise and ramp it up. The foods you eat. Watch the foods that you eat. Personally, I think sugar will kill you. And there's pretty good evidence of that. You can study up on that. But the fact is, there's a dramatic difference between health and age. And then, as I said, finally, as we get older, taking certain supplements will be very good for you. I'm not going to go through the list of supplements that I take. I'm not selling any products here. I'm trying to dissuade you from embracing the dystopic worldview now being sold to you. And that is that the elderly are losing what matters. We should be willing to set them aside. That's a cultural war that's going on right now. And I have to tell you, they're winning. If you embrace this worldview of Ezekiel Emanuel, if you embrace the worldview of those who see progress as leaving behind that which is old, and old-fashioned people being the hindrance to our culture, you are going to lose what good things you do have in your culture. So this battle is very real, and it is the battle for human life. They're literally willing to kill elderly people who don't, quote, measure up. So this is a very serious issue. It has to do with our worldview. Dystopias operate not simply by what they're doing, they operate by influencing the minds of those in the culture, so that those in the culture just go along. They simply accept, without thinking, certain serious actions that dismiss human life. That's a dystopia. And you are living in a dystopia right now. We're looking at getting old, why it's a good thing, why the proper worldview is to actually embrace getting old, to learn from it, and to embrace those who are older. It says in Psalms, teach us to number our days. We may present to you a heart of wisdom. That's Psalm 90:12. 1 Kings 3:14 says, if you walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and commandments, as your father David walked, then I will prolong your days. So having prolonged days is actually a very good thing. Deuteronomy 32:7. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of all generations. Ask your father, and he will inform you. Your elders, and they will tell you. In Titus, we're instructed older women, likewise, are to be reverent in their behavior, not malicious gossips, nor enslaved to much wine, teaching what is good, so that they may encourage the young women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be sensible, pure workers, kind, being subject to the word of God, so that it will not be dishonored. So there are principles now, and it's the battle of these principles that's at stake. Is it good to be old? It's really good to be old. It should be embraced. We know that some of the great accomplishments in history have been by those who are older, and that the more you focus on what matters, you'll learn from that and be able to offer those things to others. I can tell you this, in looking at my own family, that when my father retired, he lived for a few years, and then he died. And the same was true of his father. I believe personally that you have a purpose in your life. And as long as you're seeking out that purpose, if you have a vision, the vision of why you're alive, the desires of your heart, God says if you seek him, he'll grant you the desires of your heart. You can keep doing that. There's things to be done. If you look for those things, you will have purpose. And without vision, the people perish. The fact is, if you don't have a real vision and purpose for your life, then you'll meander and you'll feel useless. As much as Ezekiel Emanuel suggests, just die at your height. Die at your most fulfilling time. No, in fact, if you have a vision and purpose, you have good reason to keep living. You can bring that experience and learn from it and help others. Getting old is a good thing. It is good to get old. Please remind others of that. Please keep yourself healthy, and please speak up when others are being seduced by death. In Proverbs 24, it says, hold them back. People are being seduced by death right now. It says you need to speak up anyways. Don't let them be taken away to death, because he who weighs the hearts knows it, and he knows that you know it. Don't let the innocent, vulnerable be killed, whether they be babies or whether they be the elderly, because life matters.
Learn more about everything in today's show online at lifematters.life, where you'll find all the resources you need to protect life. Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life.